we just had a friend of ours leave this world. Maybe you can tell us about that incident and how this lesson can teach us something, how we can see that.
Yeah, a mutual friend of us was, she lived in Czech Republic, but she's actually, raised in Poland. Doesn't matter. But anyway, she's been following this process of Bhakti Yoga for years. So she started feeling bad one day, and the next headache, I think, and the next day she was feeling really bad, couldn't get out of bed, splitting headache, throwing up, etc. And then later that day, she went into a coma. And of course, they called the ambulance. She was living with her son and called the ambulance, and they took her to the hospital, and they diagnosed her as having a brain tumor. And so the following day was arranged for them to operate, which they did. She never came out of that coma. They operated the next day, and when they, went in, they found out that her brain was already dead.
Leaving this body is a reality that we will all have to face someday. So how to prepare for that in the best way? Welcome to the Breaking Trail podcast with me, Ruben, and my friend and teacher, Bhagavad-gita. This is where you learn to navigate life's journey through ancient wisdom. Exactly.
Let's be good guys and, just get along with each other. But the only way you're going to really achieve that is we're all spirit souls. We're all, part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. All children of God, and, different families, different colors, different creeds, different whatever. But underneath all that, we're all family. And that's the only solution.
Yeah.
So...
And that's where we're going to talk about the topic of death today. And that's, that's the big solution to deal with the death of a loved one, isn't it? To realize that there's a huge step to realize, wow, I'm actually not my body. This person leaving me is not their body either.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that foundation of knowledge will cover every aspect of life in the material world. There's no facet of material life. It's not, traceable back to this foundation of we are not the body, we're spirit souls, and all this material differences is just false perception. It's not true. And even right up to the time of death, if you're still thinking you're the body, death is the most horrific experience of all experiences. It's the one experience that everybody's trying to avoid, with the exception of those who are so, over life, so to speak. Life is so miserable and unhappy, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel of life that they can even perceive, that they just decide death is better than life. Non-existence is better than existence.
Yeah.
So they're actually, diving in or embracing death, but with a false hope that it'll end everything. Everything will be over.
Exactly.
All suffering, all pain, all misery, everything that is causing me so much difficulty will be finished. It'll all be finished.
Yeah.
But again, that's a bodily identification illusion as well. We are the body, and when the body is finished, I'm finished. But of course, we're never finished. We're eternal spirit souls, and you kill the body, and that's just nothing. It's like taking off your shirt, and you're still you. You just got on your undershirt now. Just took off the top layer. You still got on your undershirt. The second identity, So this Vedic knowledge is not only interesting and valuable, but it's necessary to be able to even understand anything about life. All these people, I just saw, a video about this person who went to some far, far north Russian village way above the Arctic Circle by skis. He's from St. Petersburg, and, multiple days and blizzards and whatever. And so he's a blogger, and I guess, he's going to capitalize on the whole thing on his blog, but his justification or whatever reason for doing it was, I'm trying to learn more about myself, but all they're doing is learning about how tough they are mentally or what limitations their body has or how much suffering can they endure, without cracking, and can they survive it? And, but that's about the body, It's not about the spirit soul. So you're not really learning about yourself.
Yeah.
You learn about the mind. All these endurance athletes will tell you that, you go to really dark places during the, event, and then you have really great highs where everything is, so bright and so wonderful. But it's all just journeys into different depths of the mind. Mm. And so, in other words, they're not achieving what they think they're achieving. Oh, I know so much about myself now, but they don't really.
Well, you didn't. I guess you have to realize that there's a requirement of, like, maybe you need some help from some external source. You can't simply do that on your own only by experiencing hard things, and then you're gonna just magically know who you are. It's kind of like whichever subject you learn, like you have to study some book and some teacher. You need some philosophy to follow.
And a person can have out-of-body experiences.
I was just gonna, and I think another danger of that is, I went to the military service for a year in Sweden, which was tough. And I'm, in the far north, the coldest winter in 40 years, a lot of challenges, carrying heavy things. It's called a hunter platoon out in the forest, and just running around, sleeping in tents, and basically like learning guerrilla warfare. Really. But I think a danger of that also is, because sure, I learned a lot of things. I really learned how to, where my limit goes, and like I will never experiencing anything as challenging to that. And so I know that I have like the frame of reference to go back to when things are hard, but it's still like one aspect is spiritually. I didn't have any gain in that term, and the other thing is that you might very easily brag about it or be proud about it or make you higher, like you said. It may.
Yeah, or it makes you more self-reliant, so to speak, and so you feel invincible, or you don't need, let's say, God in your life. I can take care of myself, kind of thing.
Exactly.
I've been through this and this and this and survived, and even became stronger as a result of it. So I'm becoming more, self-sufficient in terms of I don't need any help from God. In other words, it takes us in the wrong direction. So we become, proud or arrogant or just feeling invincible almost, and not feeling like dependent, whereas, spiritual advancement is indicated by, I know I am a dependent person eternally. And I need that help, that protection, that shelter, that guidance from God himself, and without that, I'm just as vulnerable as anybody. So yeah, it's it can take us in the wrong direction, like you pointed out, and that's a good point.
So we just had a friend of ours leave this world. Maybe you can tell us about that incident and how this lesson can teach us something, how we can see that, and how we can help someone who is in that process.
Yeah, a mutual friend of us was she lived in Czech Republic, but she's actually raised in Poland. Doesn't matter. But anyway, she's been following this process of Bhakti Yoga for years. I don't know exactly how many years, but certainly, 10, 15 or so. And so she started feeling bad one day, and the next headache, I think, and the next day she was feeling really bad, couldn't get out of bed, splitting headache, throwing up, etc. And then later that day, she went into a coma. And of course, they called the ambulance. She was living with her son and called the ambulance, and they took her to the hospital. And, they diagnosed her as having a brain tumor. And so the following day was arranged for them to operate, which they did. She never came out of that coma. They operated the next day, and when they, went in, they found out that her brain was already dead. So they just said, "There's nothing we can do. That's it." So she was on life support, and then they arranged that they were going to unplug her from life support at a certain time. So, of course, when this word got out, her friends who also follow this process and know, a lot, about death, and if one is dying or if you're the one who is dying, what to do, not just throw your hands up and say, "God, please help or save," or whatever, but actually practical things, to help this spirit soul, leave this mortal tabernacle. And so her friends came and, luckily the hospital allowed them to come into her room where she was. She's still in a coma. And so they were chanting to her and, putting, making sure she had on Tulsi neck beads, because Tulsi, as we've mentioned before, is, a very sacred plant, and the wood from the Tulsi plant, protects a person spiritually. So, that's why those who are understanding these truths, they always wear neck beads, because, one never knows when that moment is going to come and when they leave the body. So anyway, they had the neck beads on, and she was initiated by our spiritual master. Her initiation beads were there, and et cetera, et cetera. In other words, everything was prepared, forms of Krishna and her spiritual master, were there as well. And then the doctor could see, she was in the room with another patient who had the television on and so on like this. And, although they had earphones on her so she could, hear the chanting, which is very important to be able to hear the chanting at that time. The doctor saw, because of the beads and the mantras and, the pictures and so on, that she was, a real special spiritual person. So he arranged to move her into a private room where she could be alone, with her friends and helpers, caretakers. And so they unplugged her from life support, and 18 minutes later after that, she left her body. And, but, it was a glorious death, so to speak, for many reasons. I mean, just take it from the physical angle. She didn't, with brain tumors, you can, be in the body for some length of time, up to a year, 2-3 years, depending, and you're dealing with all, the inconveniences
like weird things happening
of trying to cure it, and whatever approach they make, the chemotherapies or the radiations or all that, and maybe a natural cure route, and it's really involved. And of course there's a lot of pain and also disorientation and seizures and all kind of things go with brain tumors, very unpleasant events in every sense of the word. And you lose more awareness of who you are, and you might even develop very strange behaviors that would never be your behavior otherwise. And so anyway, she avoided all that. It was like only 2 or 3, 3 or 4 days from the initial event until she left her body. So it was very fortunate in that respect.
Wow.
And she was fortunate to have, friends who knew what to do, because she's unconscious. I mean, she can't arrange things. She can't, be praying and looking at forms and chanting herself and so on. I mean, she's unconscious. But her friends knew what to do. And of course, hearing is the last sense of all the senses to shut down. So even when a person's in a coma, they can still hear.
Yeah.
So, her friends arranged for the situation to be as favorable as possible with the chanting and the forms and, the beads on the neck and, them there for her. Her perception may have been such she could perceive the help and the love and the care, and bringing the reminder to her of the Supreme Lord and her spiritual master and who she really is, and, all the things that we need to know at the time of death, But she had been preparing for this, since she began the whole process, because from the get-go, this is part of the teaching. Now is the time to inquire about the absolute truth, to know who you are, to know, what to do every day to develop this long-lost relationship with the Supreme Lord, to use your body and mind and all the energy and facilities you have to, serve the Lord and do the things that are, asked to be done by the person who knows your spiritual master and the Supreme Lord speaking to us through Scripture and the Lord in the heart. In other words, it's a daily preparation.
And not just at the end of the
It's not
life,
just wait till it happens and then scramble,
And hope for the best.
And the example that I think all of us can relate to is going to, especially universities. High schools, it's not so much involved there. You can just kind of get through. But university, if you're serious, I mean, you're trying to get a degree, and like I say, if you're serious, you don't want to fail. You want to get that degree. I mean, it costs you a lot of money to be there, and that's what you're there for, hopefully, and not so much the case for many people, but, so you study every day because at the end of this course, whatever that course may be you're taking, or, usually 5 or 6 of them, each semester, you've got exams. Along the way, you've got little exams, and then you've got the final exam, and you want to pass that exam. But if you study every day, it's not a big trauma. Okay, it's final exams, but you've prepared every day. You've learned your lessons as you go along. The teacher told you to learn this, learn that. Little quizzes along the way that you either knew it or you didn't know it, so you knew where you needed to do the work. And the final exam is like, okay, yeah, you put in a little extra effort, but, you're not just stressed out to the end and, afraid and whatever. And you go in and you take the test, and obviously you pass because you prepared. But if you didn't prepare, you're one of the guys who went there for the parties and the good times and, all the social stuff that goes with university. And you didn't study, but here comes the final exam, and you got to learn a whole semester's worth of information in a week, and you're cramming, you're staying up all night, you're taking, different, stimulants to stay awake and et cetera, and it's just such a hell. And then you go in there, and even if you do pass, you've just, been through a tragic event, and many times you don't pass because you just were not ready. It was total stress out that could have been prevented. Well, what's the real exam of life is death. I mean, that's really the final exam. If you don't pass your university exam, you can repeat the course, you can, decide it's not worth it, you can just quit, whatever. There's a few options. But with death, it's the final exam, and it's, this is it, But if you've prepared, like our friend Goswami Dasi did, it wasn't that event. And she didn't have time to study. I mean, come on, she just goes into a coma. Headache, nausea, feeling bad, coma, boom.
Wow.
So,
and she didn't know any of this before. Like she didn't know that this was. I mean, that's so quick.
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
so
know
quick.
that.
Yeah,
wow,
very quick. I mean, this is what I was told by those who were with her. So she didn't have time to prepare. She didn't get the warning like some cancer patients get. Okay, you've got stage 2 cancer. Okay, now it's stage 3. Okay, now it's stage 4. You've maybe had 2, 3 years, 5 years, whatever number of years, at least some time to say, okay, I better get it together now. And most people don't, even in those cases, because they don't know how to get it together. Stage 4 cancer, you got 6 weeks to live, and you're scrambling to get your financial situation and your family taken care of, and, make all the different arrangements, draw up the will and, all these material arrangements, So very few people actually just settle down to, trying to come to that spiritual readiness.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't even know that. That's just like, okay, death is going to come and it's going to be over. I mean, this is the normal atheistic understanding of death. So, even if you have time, you usually don't use it correctly. I know a person who was diagnosed with lung cancer because he worked in asbestos for a long time. That was his profession. And so asbestos, is very carcinogenic for the lungs. So he had lung cancer, and what did he do? He booked a vacation, where he wanted to. He always wanted to go to Europe and, see Paris and London and, Rome and whatever. So he booked this whole itinerary while he still could, and that was his preparation, just enjoy it to the end, and then, I can die saying I went to all those places. So, like I say, even if you've got advance warning, if you don't have knowledge, that advance warning is misused also.
Wow.
But, in this Bhakti Yoga teaching, we say the advance warning begins at birth.
Hey, you're born. You're actually going to die one day as well. You know that when you get born.
That says in Bhagavad-gita, second chapter, for one who is born, death is certain. And for one who dies, birth is certain. See? So, like Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada in his purport, in connection with that, says, if you're 25 years old, you've been dying for 25 years. Every day is a dying moment. You're shortening that lifespan that much, And so we, try to come to terms with this, and every day just, do what we've been told to do that will make it so we are preparing properly, So we're always talking about chanting, and so that's a daily event, and it's not like you're walking around with fear of death all the time. That's what it might sound like. You're just walking around just, oh, I'm going to die, I better do this, better do that. It's a completely opposite of that. Yeah, it's inevitable, but what you're doing every day is fun. It's gives meaning to life. It's fulfilling, and in the background, at the time of death, this is all going to be, in my favor, and, it's what I want to do, but there's not like walking around, oh my God, I'm going to die. I might die today. Or paranoia and, stressed out. No, it's not that. So the only person who's, not afraid of death is the person who's prepared. See? And so he's come to terms with that long ago, and he knows, yes. So when it comes, it's not a surprise. It might be a surprise that it's going to happen in 3 days.
Yeah. I mean, our friend was young. She was, I don't know, like me or a little bit older maybe, but
yeah, she's
still,
in her 40s probably. Her son is 16. So you could say,
she's probably in
if she had her child at, 25 or 30, she was in that area, 46 or, 40 or whatever. But, you might be a little surprised. Wow, it's going to happen in 3 days. But even then, you know what to do. Okay, I got to increase my chanting. I got to, just quit wasting time or being involved in so much of this external hoopla and, go within. I got like short time here. And I've known many of my friends who got, advanced warnings, and they just took it in stride and, went the route that they needed to go. And when the time came, it was fine,
Yes.
And people say, oh, you're not afraid of death? Well, really, truthfully, I don't know until the time comes. We don't. They say you don't know your strength till you meet. The soldier doesn't know his strength till he meets the enemy. You can say, I'm not afraid of death. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you what my immediate emotion will be or feeling, but I know what, the story is and what to do. And, if I'm as fortunate as our friend, there will be, at least one other person there to help remind me of, the truths that we know and, help, bring us in closer to our relationship with our spiritual master in Krishna. And, it'll be what it is, But I nor you nor any of us who've had this education will go into it ignorant. There's a lot of difference.
But I guess that's, again, maybe because the preparation seems maybe unnecessary, and maybe the preparation in itself is reminding you of the fact that, I mean, you may not have the faith to know that something else is happening. I'm gonna just read it. This is an English poet called Philip Larkin who describes it, this fear of death in a poem, and he said that this is what we fear: no sight, no sound, no touch or taste or smell, nothing to think with, nothing to love or link with, the anesthetic from which none comes round. Anesthetic? Anesthetic. Maybe, is that a word? Anesthetic. Well, whatever. But yeah, my my dad always says, like, what if I hadn't given birth to you? How would it be to not exist? Like, you wouldn't, you should be thankful that you exist thanks to me, he says.
Well, that's all based on this idea we're the body. And like this poet says, no sight, no sound, no touch, no love, no nothing, the void. You just enter a void, which is basically non-existence. And really that's not how it is. That's speculation, but it's not reality. your father said, what if I hadn't given birth to you? You wouldn't exist. You existed before.
Mm.
All he did is just brought you, the spirit soul, who happened to be, contained in that individual person's sperm, into the womb of your mother and entered into the egg. She was the incubator, and the body developed around you. You were the life that made it so that material body could develop. And so you did exist already, and you will exist, eternally, whether it came through your, biological father or through another biological father, whatever. This is just people who don't understand. How would you wouldn't exist if it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm God, I made it so you exist.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
the truth is, it's not true. We exist eternally. Your father existed eternally. His biological father didn't create him, And it's just on and on and on. So ignorance is not in our favor ever, in any category, and especially in life and death. Ignorance is not our friend. They say ignorance is bliss. Wrong. You'll never reach bliss by the vehicle of ignorance, because the nature of the soul is Sat Chidananda Vigraha. Sat, eternal, Chit, knowledge, Ananda, spiritual bliss. That's our nature, spiritual bliss. That's where the bliss is. See? And you'll never achieve that in ignorance, The real fruit is in knowledge. And that's our whole process. Learn these things. This is available. This is information that's absolute. It's not speculative. You read all these poets and, various people who've come back after out-of-body experiences, and they're describing what they saw and what they felt and so on. But it's all just speculative, and they're just saying, well, this was what happened to me. And another person will say, well, this is what happened to me. But I've yet to hear one of them actually recount it as it really is. They were out of their physical body. They were not in the spiritual world. They were still, experiencing their attachments, and their time here wasn't over. Some people, like I recently heard one person, expounded on it in a lot of detail. He was saying, I had no attachment. I had no understanding of the loved ones I'd left behind and so on and so on. See, but I was told by an invisible voice or force when I was out there, and he described where he was, that this is temporary. You got to go back.
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever the point is, he wasn't finished with his term in this body, karmically speaking. He still had time to do in this life, this body he was in, and then he could move on. You see? So, we're not in control. See, he couldn't control his not coming back. He really liked it where he was, you see. But he was told, you got to go back. So he wasn't in control of that situation. Or, someone might, be told, you can't go back, but I want to go back. It can go either way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the point is, we are not in control, but we think we are. But I can take control of my everyday activities. I can make decisions. That's the beauty of the human form. We can make choices. So I can make decisions every day what I will do with this day. See, I've got this body, I got this mind, I got this facility, I got, this opportunity. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
That I can do. So if I have knowledge, I can decide to do the best thing I can with the time for that day to advance me spiritually, to gain more knowledge. See, I can study scripture, I can chant the mantras, I can try to use, my talents or service in some way that's going to be pleasing to the Lord and make it so other people can have the opportunity to know that I've been given, et cetera, et cetera.
I read one of our spiritual masters, he was talking about this, and he said that your consciousness determines your future. The actions that you take in this life determine your consciousness. Yeah. So we have, like you say, we can actually make the choice where we want to go, which destination do we want to reach, and which consciousness do we then cultivate? Which actions do we engage in, and what attachments do we have?
Yeah. Exactly. So to a degree, we are in control, but it's an individual decision to what I'm going to do with that control. So in ignorance, and I think I'm the body, I'm going to use my, my freedom of choice to decide to do things that are adverse to my real well-being. Yeah. And so that's why we need, like you said, this is from our spiritual master. We need a spiritual teacher, someone who is above the illusions and the tendencies to make mistakes, and he's not relying on imperfect senses and so on, to actually guide us, to tell us what we need to know. Mm-hmm. But we've got to be receptive to that. That's another point. Many times we're not receptive to the information that we need to receive, but we're very receptive to garbage. We're like open garbage pits. Just we'll receive it, we'll believe it, we'll embrace it, we'll propagate it, But when it comes to the real important things in life, we're not receptive.
Is it is that because we believe it's easier, or what's the reason that we do that?
Well, again, it's back to consciousness.
Yeah.
We've got an adverse reaction to the truth.
Yeah.
Because we're covered, we're in illusion, we're contaminated. I mean, you've been on a clean diet for a long time, and so have I, and so you're receptive to information about food and what is good and what is not good and what's nutritious, and you're attracted to nutritious food. You see, but a garbage eater, a person who likes junk food, is not attractive to healthy food.
No.
He's attracted to junk. Like last week we talked about alcohol from that, UK report. And, a person who knows this and has some understanding and intelligence is not attracted to alcohol. He's got a different taste. He's understanding this is an obstacle in what I'm trying to do with my life, and et cetera, et cetera. But, most people are definitely attracted, and they'll hate this report, or they'll try to refute it and say, well,
exactly,
it was biased, or, it's not really provable, or whatever. I mean, in other words, they're going to spend a lot of time and energy debunking this information because it's in the way of what they're attracted to. It's their consciousness that makes it so they're attracted to those things, and another consciousness is not. So we got to cultivate a higher consciousness who is adverse to lower activities. And you got to start somewhere. You got to do that,
Unless you want to just make excuses and find things that will prove you the point that you already have. or find people that say the things that you already believe, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah, of course. But you've got to go beyond that. You got to admit, I don't know. Maybe there's some information that I don't know. See, not based on my desires, not based on my, addictions or whatever, but based on, if it's contradictory completely to my desires and my addictions, it could still be true, It's not what I want to hear, but it's what I need to hear. And then that's higher knowledge. But you got to start somewhere, Somewhere you have to begin a journey in a different direction,
Because it's not going to change by itself. Like, it's not like society is helping us to talk about death. I mean, there's no, and that's another interesting, how do we then prepare, and what would be an ideal way in society to make it so that people can prepare in a positive way for death? Because as it is now, it seems like that we don't. Doesn't help us to.
Well, society has to be run by people who want to help people understand before society is going to do it.
Yeah.
If you're talking about leadership and, the general trend and et cetera, Well, so I don't think we can expect that to happen, And it's becoming more and more, adverse to any kind of spiritual information about any aspect of life. Society in general is putting up a stone wall, against religion and teachings and et cetera, And so we can't expect society to do it in general. We have to step out and be the individual who's the seeker, And the seeker, if he's serious, will be guided to the teacher, to the information, whether it comes from Scripture, whether it comes from, a bona fide spiritual master, whether it comes from somebody who's following these authoritative truths and, has the ability to pass on this information. Just like our podcast. I mean, what are we doing here? This is not a popularity show, certainly for sure. We're not going to break any records here. But we're just hoping that a few people will be attracted to this information, whether they find us, in one way or another way on the internet. Somebody tells them about it, they see an ad somewhere, whatever. But when they come, if they're interested, if they're actually, receptive or seeking this kind of information, then they'll find it worth listening to, worth looking at, worth spending time with us, And most people aren't in that category. There's many other podcasts that, are dealing with subject matter that would be much more attractive.
So, yeah, that's very true. And
so, we've just got to find the right people and the right information and learn it and apply it. And, that's the only individual solution. As expecting society to do it, no way. It's just not going to happen. This is Kali Yuga.
Right, and we talked about that before.
We talked about Kali Yuga a couple of different podcasts, and this is the age when irreligion is on the rise and religion is, declining sharply and quickly. It's almost in free fall, So, and even the religious, institutions, so to speak, more and more promoting, spirituality as a way to gain material, advanced positions.
And I guess they have to, because that's what people want to hear. That's what they get followers from, and they're dependent on the followers to have the money to run their whatever organizations, buildings.
Yeah, more followers, and So that's what they want. They want to, get more material benefit, and they have a ready audience that, if you pray, if you do this, you do that, you become a good, Christian or whatever they're promoting, God will give you good material results. It's like in the Vedas, the demigod Lord Shiva. A lot of people worship Lord Shiva because he's very easily pleased. In the Vedas, it describes how to worship Lord Shiva properly. And he's quick to give material benefits, you see. So that's what they want. There's a lot of followers of Lord Shiva because, he's, ready to award material benedictions. Durga Devi, the same, she's the same. Many people, worship Durga Devi, because of material results that they can get. Yeah. So they're just materialists using, ritual, we'll call it, it's not the spiritual practices that we are talking about, but spirituality, religiosity is the best word to use for material gain. It said there's 3 goals in life for most people. Religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Well, the religiosity has basically been eliminated already, but let's just say, you worship, in your religiosity, the certain demigod, Lord Shiva, Durga Devi, you perform your sacrifices, your rituals, your offerings, your prayers, your mantras, whatever, according to who you're worshiping. See, so that's your religious performance. But the goal is for economic development. See, because now this demigod is pleased with your, offerings and worship and so on. So therefore, you're awarded economic development. Why do you want economic development? For sense gratification. You see, so you can enjoy more and more sensual pleasures. And basically, that's the category that almost everyone is in. But like I say, now we've taken out the religiosity, and it's just economic development and sense gratification.
But that's not how society should be. I mean, you're saying like this. That's just what it is. But that's not the ideal case, or how is the ideal case then run? Or what's the ideal?
No, it's not the ideal case. But that's available for people who have this consciousness. This is where they are in their conscious evolution.
Yeah.
See, so by following these Vedically prescribed rituals, rules, regulations, performing their religious practices, that's following this authority. So in its own way, it's purifying. It's understanding I need to worship somebody else, higher above me. There's this personality above me who controls my destiny.
Exactly.
So if I want good material gain, then I've got to please this person. So it's making it so I'm subordinate to a higher authority, and I have to live my life in a pleasing way to get what I want. Yeah. So that's an advanced consciousness in and of itself. See? Then they get the economic development, and then they, can also have the sense gratification. And after this going on, many times they finally come to the conclusion, well, this doesn't make me happy. I'm kind of burned out on all this. So then the next step is liberation. I want liberation from all this. So it's really taken them, to a point where, I understand the sense gratification doesn't work. So now they want to be free of all of this. So therefore, they're thinking now on leaving this whole dimension behind, liberated. They might, renounce the world, take to an order of life called sannyas, or, becoming, an austere yogi, or whatever their next step might be to achieve some kind of liberation, you see. And usually their liberation is just negation of the negative, be done with all the anxieties and frustrations and the material overload and whatever.
Yeah.
You see, but it's a higher level. You see, now they're, moving away from the sensual,
Materialism and
overload.
yeah.
And then so it's just a gradual evolution of consciousness. And then at some point they might meet a true teacher who tells them, yes, all this is good, but the liberation you're seeking, which is just freedom and negation of the negative and all that, is not good enough. You, the spirit soul, need positive spiritual pleasure. And then he can lead them, to bhakti yoga. And how many lifetimes on this wheel it's going to take before they come to that stage, that's how long it takes.
Wow.
It could take, hundreds, thousands of lifetimes. Who knows?
Well, in different life forms as well, or just in the human life form?
No. Well, you got to be in a human form. But you're using your human life under guidance, authoritative, guidance,
Yeah,
and so on. So you're qualifying along the way, and even the sense gratification. If you're in this category, you see, of following, a higher authority, that's under regulation as well. See, it's not just wanton, degraded, let the senses run wild. It's under regulation as well, And they may go to higher heavenly planets, whatever. See, so it's an orchestrated. I won't say orchestrated. It's a calculated process of evolution of consciousness, given by the Supreme Lord, because a person's where they're at. If they're down here somewhere, they're not going to be attracted to the higher levels.
Yeah.
You see,
Yeah.
you have to, speak to the audience of where they're at.
That's amazing. That reminds me of the section in Bhagavad-gita that talks about, I guess you can't remember where it is, but you know where Krishna is speaking about, like, first the knowledge, and then second, like, or you first you work, you do your duty. How is it? And second, you not just do your duty, but you yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You renounce the fruits of your action. You do your duty, you renounce the fruits of your action,
Right.
And then gradually you're doing it for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. And, so it's an evolution. And in the 12th chapter, devotional service, it talks about different, steps. Okay, the best is full focus on and a constant remembrance of and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord. That's the highest level of consciousness. That's perfect. But if you can't do that, then follow the regulated principles of bhakti yoga, and you will develop a desire to know me. But if you can't do that, you see, then, support those people with your fruits of your labor who are spreading this teaching. And if you can't do that, not everybody's going to do that, then do some charity work, some welfare work, And if you can't do that, and it just goes down, okay, do this is the best, but you can't, okay, and it just works down until you find in that list something you can do, and then this kind of starts bringing you up, Renounce the fruits of your action, meditation, and so on. In the list of suggested activities, there's something that maybe you can say, well, yeah, I can do that.
But the core and all those processes, and kind of like the red, what do you call it? I don't know if you call it the main thread, or the red thread, they say in Swedish in Norwegian, like, is like you're accepting a higher authority. Would that be correct?
See, so like the giving in charity idea, doing welfare work, giving your time and energy to help somebody else. It's basically not God. You're not, connected with God here. You're just fellow man kind of thing. It could even be, the animals or whatever. But it's taking you outside yourself, because we're so I, me, mine conscious. Everything is for me. See, But this is taking us outside of that to thinking about somebody else. Or how about their discomfort? How about their needs? What can I do to help them? So that's elevating. That's expanding our consciousness from just everything is about me to I'm thinking of somebody else. And then that brings us to a level of receptivity for something higher. And then, again, that's making me receptive to another avenue of advancement.
Yeah.
And gradually, I come to the point where, yes, I must live my life in service to the Supreme Lord, and the highest welfare work I can do for others is to give them this knowledge, to help them, the spirit soul, in their journey to knowledge and freedom from illusion.
Yeah.
And so, the whole Vedic system is ultimately geared toward bringing a person to their constitutional position of loving service to God. But it might take lifetimes and lifetimes, performing all these different rules and rituals and regulations and, gaining a little bit here and there in another lifetime and moving forward. But it's an evolution. And we look at everything as one lifetime. Let me see.
Yeah. But that's so hard for the mind to relate to, which is, again, I think, like you.
It is if you're just looking at it from the point of view that we have now. But the more you study this truth, then the more you start saying it becomes more and more feasible reality.
Yeah, I see.
Just like, or this is kind of off the subject, but it's not. UFOs, that was just thought like, oh, come on, man. UFOs are just like somebody's dream, or you just saw some phenomenon and, you just speculated. But now it's becoming like, documented evidence and so on. And so now more and more people are accepting the reality of, probably so. Probably there really are UFOs. Yep. But if you backed up 50 years, it was like, come on, you guys are dreaming.
Yeah.
So it's the more you hear things, then the more you become receptive to it. You see, it becomes, I can begin to envision that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, I think this is like, I just remember that. Wasn't that I think a U.S. military report? I think that's what I remember. Like a few days ago, that couldn't confirm or couldn't confirm, but also couldn't rule out alien spacecraft.
Yeah. And again, if you know the Vedas, there's life on every planet, and much, much more advanced than on Earth planet. And they can travel interplanetary travel, no problem. They got, abilities to do that, either mystically or, with devices far advanced and whatever. See, and, so when I heard about UFOs after studying these Vedic teachings, I was sure. Of course, and I've, personally seen a couple phenomena, which, wasn't, like, a Boeing 747 from United Airlines flying over, and, it was interesting, but it was like, it wasn't like, or it couldn't be. It's like, yeah. And it describes in the Vedas that the demigods, they used to visit planet Earth regularly. Now the things are so, so hedonistic and, things are so degraded that they don't bother to come here anymore.
Yeah, well, what would they do here?
Yeah, why come here? But when Maharaj Yudhisthira, Maharaj Parikshit, and so on were the kings, they used to visit on a regular basis. When Lord Gauranga was here, they came to see him often. So, all these things that we think couldn't be, it's just, for other people, it's normal. It's normal. It's not like some wow.
No, and it's also just normal in the sense that you don't have your whole life focusing on it. It's just okay. Well, like UFOs, that's not. It's explainable. There's life all over universe. No problem. You know.
Yeah, but
okay.
that's not going to help you at the time of death.
No.
You know.
Exactly.
So in our Bhakti Yoga process, we focus on, our relationship with the Supreme Lord, and using every day not to speculate about UFOs, but to to actually try to kindle and improve our relationship with the Supreme Lord, who's without and within. He's in our heart. He's present in every atom. He's, in his abode in the spiritual world, etc., all simultaneously. And it's just, common information for us who have, studied this for a long time and accepted. And the more you chant, the more it's not you just study it. It's just like it becomes a reality. It's like the questions and doubts, they're not even there. You don't even doubt this at all. It's just like it's true. And so it's different consciousness again, back to consciousness. So if we have this type of consciousness when our time to leave our body arrives, we'll be fine. But it's not going to happen overnight.
No, and another thing is standing on the side and seeing, like, I just have, being a friend leave is also, but like what happens before. I mean, how there's a friend of mine who is, I see she has a lot of grudges, and she's getting older, and she grudges a lot of things, big things, and I remember. I remember the Lord's Prayer, because I used to, follow the Christian teaching, and they say, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who has trespassed against us." And I think that's again, isn't that another extension of, you have to realize how small you are to be able to pass the test, like how insignificant or how powerless you are. But if you at the same time hold anger at someone else, then how can you feel that way? And then standing on the side and trying to help this person, that's difficult for me. How you can help a person prepare.
It's difficult, and that part of the Lord's Prayer is, we ask. I mean, in that prayer, Jesus said we should ask God to forgive us as we forgive those who've trespassed against us. Right. In other words, but if I don't forgive them, then how can I expect God to forgive me? That's the point. I want God to forgive me, but I refuse to forgive these people. So Jesus said, no, forgive me as I forgive them. So if I want God to forgive me, I also have to forgive them.
But because Jesus, wasn't this the last thing that Jesus said as well before he left his body? If I remember right, that he said, like, if I've hurt anyone or done any fault to, like, made anyone, some fault, then please forgive me for my.
Yeah, and forgive them who are persecuting me.
Right.
Forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know who I am, that I'm your dear, servant and son. They don't know how great an offense it is to do this to your dear devotee. See, they don't know. They're in ignorance. So forgive them for this atrocity that they're committing.
As I beg for your forgiveness. This is exactly this quote that's from the Lord's Prayer.
So to the end, when everything was in favor of Jesus being angry at these people, falsely accused, falsely persecuted, even by his so-called own people, although he didn't see them that way at all. But the Jews, who were actually the one who actually demanded that he be, crucified. The Romans, they didn't want anything to do with it. They just,
Exactly.
That's why they kind of opened it up to what do you guys want to do? Because it's not our problem. And this is a conflict between you guys, not us. We're just, kind of like the rulers here who are keeping law and order. And so anyway, the crowd said, crucify him. See? So anyway, falsely accused, falsely, punished, and falsely, crucified. So he had every reason to be angry. But because of his love for God and his love for everyone, he prayed to God, please forgive them. They just don't know what they're doing. They're ignorant. The Roman soldiers, definitely, they don't know what they're doing. They were basically atheists. I mean, they didn't follow any religious teachings at all. Although they did, in those days, those soldiers and leaders and so on, again, they knew everything that's where they had all the gods, like the Greek gods and so on. Everything was the will of the gods. If it's the will of the gods, this will happen. And if the gods will, if it's the gods, not God, not a supreme person, but the many gods who rule different aspects of life, So they, in one way, were demigod worshipers. They had some feeling of respect toward, the gods. But anyway, the point still being, they were ignorant, and Jesus said, forgive them. So he was forgiving to the end. That's love for God. Absolute, unconditional forgiveness. And the heart can actually rest easy when we forgive. But when we carry grudges, like you're referring to your friend, the heart is always bound in envy and anger and, hate and revenge, jealousy. Yeah. And that just destroys us from the inside.
Yeah, and how are we going to leave the world in that condition? Doesn't feel like...
It's not a good future. Yeah, so I don't know what your relationship is with that friend of yours, but, sometimes it's not bad just to speak the truth.
Yeah.
If they accept it, they do. If they don't, what have you lost, Even if you quit being their friend, you tried.
Yeah.
You're not much of a friend if speaking to them for their own good makes it so you're no longer their friend. It's really, the friendship was pretty shallow.
That's true.
So sometimes you just got to step up and say what needs to be said in a way that's, as palatable as it can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if nobody speaks the truth, then whoever hears the truth? This is a problem today. Who's speaking the truth? If nobody's speaking it, nobody's hearing it.
Yeah.
And many people are speaking loudly about a lot of things, but what they're speaking about is not the truth that we're talking about. And some people are coming to a point where they're ready to hear more. I mean, these dire times can have an effect in one of two ways. It can just take everybody down, or it can make some people just look for a solution here. I want to hear another story. This story is not a story I want to hear. And, so that's a few people that are in that category.
There was an article that I read about, and I think, just to say that, I think this topic of forgiveness is one that we could probably come back to one more time to talk about it. It's an important topic. But there was an article I read about Muhammad Ali when he was leaving this world, I think like 5 years ago. And he said, you reminded me about that. He said, I think maybe my Parkinson's disease is God's way of reminding me what is important. You know, that was, like, wow.
See, he had some basis. He had something to speak from.
Yeah, he said, because this news article, they said, Ali's daughter Hannah last night described her father's final moments. And she says, we all tried to stay strong and whispered in his ear, you can go now. We will be okay. We love you. Thank you. You can go back to God now. All of us were hugging and kissing him and holding his hands, chanting the Islamic prayer.
Yeah, great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
See, that's what we're talking about.
Not grasping on it. Don't leave. What are you doing? No, we'll be okay. You can go. We'll be okay.
Yeah, there's some understanding there.
Yeah. Wow.
And all of us are going to be on both sides of that story. The one with somebody who's leaving or the one leaving.
Sooner or later.
We're going to be on both of those sides, most likely.
Yeah.
So the more we deal with it correctly, the better it is.
What's the yeah, I was just gonna say, what's the one thing, like, if anything, we should cultivate to and remember to try to prepare ourselves for this moment. And
we're spirit souls, and as spirit souls, we need spiritual food, and the food of all foods for the soul is the transcendental sounds, the mantras, this information. But every day, chant the mantras. That's the one thing above all things. There is nothing close to that. That is the epitome of life, is the holy names. That's what anybody can do. You don't have to join something. You don't have to declare your allegiance to anything. You can just chant every day. And that will have an amazing effect. Yeah. And so if you chant every day, when that last day comes, you can still chant. You'll be chanting. You've done that. You've chanted every day. Or let's just say frequently. I mean, maybe not every day, but that's, of course, the best. Then at that moment, that last day, that's what you do. That's your routine. You've already done that. I think next week we're going to talk maybe something about habits.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So that being said, we should chant.
Yeah.
And when are you going to have your little concert?
Yeah, I remember you told me last week. I need to speak to Janne because she's at work normally on Mondays. This is middle of the day for us. But, well, if we're going to meet next week, then she's not going to be on work next week. So we can speak about it.
But next week we won't have a
okay.
Monday event.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just not. But
yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
I don't know. We'll work it out somehow, maybe.
Yeah, somehow, maybe. No, I'll find some time for that. Maybe we could actually,
record something.
No, I was gonna say do it at the. Now I have to think about it.
Anyway, for now, let's chant.
Yeah. That's the one thing we have to think about now.
And
the most important.
And the mantra is the mantra that we always use. It's, Gauranga Haribo. Is that the only mantra? No. But it's simple, it's easy. And if you're tuning in on a regular basis, it becomes familiar. and you don't have to think about it. You can just relax and chant.
Regular habits is good for us.
Yeah. Haribo, Haribo, Hari Haribo, 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 Hare Haribo. Haribo, Goranga Haribo, Haribo, Goranga Haribo, Goranga Haribo, Goranga Haribo, Goranga Haribo, Haribo, Goranga, Goranga Haribo, hey. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga Haribo. Haribo.
Well,
All right. Ending with the Sankirtan is always nice.
awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. And we'll be back next week. Yeah. You'll see us when you see us.
Put it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll see us when you see us.
Yes, good. Thank you, Malakia.
Yeah. Thank you. And Haribo to all the family there.
Yeah.
And we thank our Chintamani team for their participation, always ready to take part and, help promote what we're doing.
Yeah.
Slava's twisting the dials and making it happen. So, yeah. So, Ruben, thank you. And we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Yep. Habits. Looking forward.
Yeah.
hear
That's the next one. Habits. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly.
All right. Namaste, Haribo.
Namaste. Haribo. So we hope this was useful to you, and if it was, then feel free to leave a review or a comment on Facebook or your podcast listening platform so that other people can get inspired to listen in as well. And make sure to sign up for our email list if you'd like to get updates on upcoming episodes. And if you'd like to contribute and help us run the podcast with our costs, then we do have a mini donation-based platform called Patreon, where you can find that. So all that is available on our website, breakingtrail.life. I'm looking forward to see you soon again. So again, thank you for joining today, and have a great day. Remember, stay true to yourself and dare to break trail.